This week, people up and down the East Coast and the Caribbean were talking a lot and taking a look back at Superstorm Sandy. We'll talk to a first responder who worked through the night saving people, and we'll talk about the recovery efforts and how much more needs to be done. And let's not forget, this Tuesday, November 5th, is Election Day. In New York City, Bill de Blasio is poised to win the race for mayor by a historically large margin. How much did the government shutdown help Democrats? And we'll cap things off with our lightning round and talk about a big win for Boston Red Sox fans, what's happening at the box office, and much more. But first, we turn our attention to 1 year ago this week when Sandy came crashing ashore. The numbers are still staggering: $65 billion in damage in the U.S. and at least $315 million in the Caribbean. She was a storm that no one will ever forget.
1 year after Sandy, residents of Staten Island held an anniversary service called Light the Shore to help heal the wounds left by the storm.
We want to all show people that Staten Island is not a forgotten borough.
People carried candles and flashlights as a symbolic triumph over the darkness that Sandy brought.
It's unforgettable.
Candidate for mayor of New York, Democrat Bill de Blasio, spoke during the interfaith prayer ceremony.
I think there's a lot of people still haven't gotten the benefits they deserve. I think there's a lot of people who are fighting with insurance companies for claims that should have been responded to a long time ago. So I think right away there's really a bureaucratic problem that has to be addressed.
Those gathered at the vigil remembered victims and recounted the horrors of the storm.
At night, hearing people crying, help me, and I couldn't help them because I couldn't go out in the water.
Beatrice Spagnuolo and Anna Rispoli, both best friends and neighbors, lost their lives that night.
Her house was totally underwater, and unfortunately my husband had found her there. So we're here tonight. We're grateful for this ceremony in her honor.
As many still struggle to rebuild their lives, others say the kindness of friends and neighbors has helped them move forward.
And we mentioned the numbers. The most significant number, of course, is 285. That's the number of lives that Sandy claimed. But thankfully, there was not a greater loss of life, and for that, we have many first responders to thank. Joining us here on Fresh Outlook is Robert Laberta. He was the fire chief in Union Beach, New Jersey, one of the hardest hit areas along the Jersey Shore. We also have Diane Concannon from the Red Cross and Dee Dee Benkie, former White House aide. Thank you all for joining us. And I think it's much like a 9/11. Anybody that was here in this area certainly remembers where they were, and just want to get an idea of where everybody was and what the past year has looked like, especially for the Red Cross and for the fire departments. Dee Dee, we're going to start with you. Yours was a harrowing story where the crane was on 57th Street in Manhattan.
Yeah, I was just standing right under it when it broke. So we heard this big loud noise, and I had a foreign family. I don't know where they were from, but whenever it happened, the scaffolding fell right in front of us on the street. It was amazing because we didn't know what was going on, but then when it fell, it's like, whoa, something is. So they start screaming, running for their lives, as they should have. And I had to take pictures. I mean, I was there. I thought, well, it already dropped, so why don't I get a picture of it? And kept taking pictures. It got picked up from the Post, Japanese, all kinds of different foreign media, because I was on the scene, strangely enough. So yeah, that was an interesting experience. And then went to Times Square and was in a place where it was all windows and saw the lights go out, was facing that way and saw the lights go out from the street on downtown.
Unbelievable.
It was really amazing.
And you and I have talked before about our experience on 9/11. Of course, you were 9/11. You were in the White House. Just unbelievable, though. Diane, the Red Cross has been on the front lines since day one. I've been out in so many areas myself reporting, and you saw those Red Cross trucks. And as we heard in that story there, everybody thanked the volunteers and the people that came to help, and that's what got people through. Tell us about your experience.
Well, at that time during the storm, there was, in New Jersey alone, we had 65 shelters open. So we had volunteers there taking care of people that had been evacuated. So it was an incredibly frightful time for a lot of people, and we were lucky we had people there from New Jersey and all over who were here to help us.
Was this one of the biggest rescue efforts for you guys? I mean,
definitely. The year before was Irene, but that was a different storm. She came up the coast along land, so we were hit with a lot of flooding in the northern part of the state, but the coastline, even though they were evacuated, there wasn't much of an impact. So that was a huge concern with Sandy, was the storm coming up the Atlantic Ocean and then taking that left hook and just slamming into the coastline and surging all that water into all the areas like Union Beach and Staten Island and Middlesex.
Of course, Robert Laberta, you're from Union Beach. You were the fire chief that night, and it wasn't just that left hook that Sandy took. You also had that high tide, and you also had the full moon. And your story is just remarkable. Can you please just share some of your story from October 29th?
On October 29th, during the storm, I was actually working in the Emergency Operations Center, which is above our police headquarters, and I was in charge of the fire department. And things started out actually pretty quiet. You know, we had some wires down, some of the normal calls that we would get on a daily basis. Then things rapidly began to deteriorate. It started with, we had poles that started snapping, and then we had electrical lines down, and then eventually we started losing power. It just seemed like the water just came out of nowhere. And as the water came up, the desperate calls began to come in.
How many calls do you remember how many calls? I know New York City had something like 57,000 in 30-minute times, the FDNY. What about you guys?
Our town is 1.9 square miles. We have 6,800 residents. And normally our volume of calls as a volunteer fire department is usually max 300 calls a year if we're lucky. During Sandy and from the time from the storm hit until pretty much the storm subsided, and then we had to do all the cleanup work, and we had a lot of calls we had to answer after that. We probably, when I filed the paperwork, we did approximately 500 calls total.
Oh, wow. And for you guys on the front lines, I mean, I was a reporter out there, but you guys were actually responding to help people. Was there a certain point at any time that you just felt so overwhelmed?
Yes. It was a very rough time for us. We're a small department, and we never expected the storm to be as bad as it was. We knew it was coming, and we planned as best as we could. Being a small department and having limited resources like we do, we did reach out to other local departments, municipalities, to see if they could offer us any help. And we did get a lot of them that were standing by waiting for that call during the storm.
Tell me about some of the actual rescues. I know that some people were actually, you found people floating on rooftops.
Yes.
Just tell me a little bit about some of the more dramatic rescues that you have, because still 1 year later, I don't think people even can comprehend what we had.
Some of the rescues that I can remember was one of the rescues, we had a captain of our fire department, and his wife and 3 children were floating away in their car as they were trying to escape. And he had to take some of his crew to go rescue them. And that was something that stuck with me because, I mean, we're all family, you know?
Sure.
We know it, we spent time with each other's families and everything else. So that struck me. And then we had a lieutenant that his family was trapped in an attic. And he had to go back on his own with I think he brought one other guy back to his house to get them out of the attic. But Brook Avenue was the worst part of town as far as at the top of the storm. We had people that were on their rooftops that were floating away. At one point there was a family that went into the water and they all started swimming off in different directions. They eventually found each other, came back, and were able to get back on a roof.
And thank goodness for all of you, all the firefighters that were out there, not only from your department, but from all the states, New York and New Jersey, that had such harrowing rescues. And how many people, does it surprise anybody that there weren't more people actually killed? I mean, 285, I think it was 135 in the States. It's amazing to me when you hear these stories of just heroism from you, but I find it almost amazing that more people were not killed.
Well, thanks to our guest here, because, you know, I mean, really, I mean, you're prepared. This is what you do. I mean, and you went in and you did it, and you saved lives and saved a lot of them. So that's really, you know, it's amazing when you think about it.
Where does the Red Cross, where do fire departments, what have you learned from Sandy, and where are you prepared, like, are you changing any of your preparedness for the future? I'll start with you, Diane.
Well, to learn how a storm can affect the peoples of a state. Sandy was just devastating. The need for more people to be prepared themselves. Whether the storm is going to destroy your home, that's one thing. But many of the families inland, being prepared to shelter in place, if it's safe to stay in your home, being ready to do that. I mean, aside from the unfortunate people who lost their homes, most of the state had no power whatsoever, some for 2 weeks at a time. So just being able to, if it's safe to stay in your home, being prepared, ready to shelter in that home.
That's a great tip, because I think so many times we've seen in the storms before, people didn't heed those warnings. So I think Sandy certainly brought that to the forefront to make sure that you are prepared. Give us a couple of tips. Give us your top 3 tips to make sure that you're prepared at home.
Well, be ready for when the electricity goes out. Don't use candles, as our fire department will tell you here. There's many other sources of light. Have enough batteries, water on hand. Stock your car with enough supplies as well, especially during the winter months in case you get stuck out on the road. Just be ready to have your family safe and sheltered inside. We saw many people may have lost, a window may have been broken. Do you have the supplies, the wood to board that up again, the nails, the hammers?
Sure.
Have all that at the ready so that you can stay in your home and you don't have to go out into the storm. And there's many injuries that are caused by that as well.
And just in terms of the town right now, Union Beach, again, one of the hardest hit areas in New Jersey. I was there the next day with one of our cameramen here in the studio, and seeing all the people fleeing their homes. How is the town recovering now?
The town is coming along. I mean, obviously it's going to take a lot of work to get it back to where it used to be. And it's a small community, and neighbors have been helping neighbors, and I know that the funding hasn't always been very forthcoming with helping people get back on their feet. Many of the residents that I've spoken with after the storm and recently are still having trouble with the insurance companies. They're still waiting on money from FEMA. I mean, the fire department, my fire company in particular, we're still waiting on FEMA money.
Was your fire department, was it destroyed?
Union Beach has 4 firehouses that make up the fire department. My firehouse was on Park Avenue in Union Beach, and we had 4 feet of water inside our firehouse. And most of the work that we've done to mitigate the damage was done by us. We pretty much did all the work ourselves.
Now, I asked Diane the same question, obviously with the Red Cross, but from the fire department, what have you learned from a storm like this, and what do you now tell people? Is it the same thing, that you should be better prepared or well prepared for your home?
Well, we've always told people that when it comes time to evacuate, please heed our call to evacuate and go. And you get people that say, well, I've lived in this house for 40 years and the water's never affected me. It's never come up this high. I have nothing to worry about. And unfortunately, those were the calls from the people who were asking for help. So, a year later, the only way that the fire department could be more prepared is to have more equipment. And again, we're a small fire department, so we're very limited in our funding. We could use some extra boats. We can use cold water suits. There's a lot of equipment out there that we could really get our hands on. And I believe right now we put in for a grant for some of that equipment. That'll help us in the future.
Get a couple final thoughts from you. Just how proud are you and of your department and the men that worked for you that night? And the men and women, I should say, excuse me.
I'm extremely proud of the members of my fire department. They did a tremendous job with all the rescues they did. Some of the rescues we didn't have boats. Guys were neck deep in the water, saving people from their houses. So I am immensely proud of the guys in my fire department and the ladies.
Well, we certainly thank you for coming onto the show and sharing that story. And I think it's very fair to call you a true American hero.
And hopefully you get your grant money so you can get what you need from the government and FEMA.
That's right.
You need to get on it.
Yeah.
All right, don't go away, everyone. When we come back, we will continue our talks about Sandy and focus on the recovery efforts and challenges facing thousands who are still trying to rebuild.